Welcome to Green and Red, scrappy politics for scrappy people. A regular podcast on radical, environmental and anti-capitalist politics. Brought to you by Bob Bazanko and Scott Parkin.
Welcome to the silky smooth sounds of the Green and Red podcast. I'm your co-host, Scott Parkin, in Berkeley, California today. And as always, I'm joined by
Bob Bazanko of the People's Republic of Texas.
People's Republic of Texas.
Yes. Radical Marxists have taken over Texas.
Cultural Marxism.
Cultural Marxism. Because I'm sure they know what that means.
Yeah.
I bet Greg Abbott has a Walter Benjamin reading, so he probably knows all that shit. Yeah.
I'm sure they taught that at whatever bullshit law school or business school he went
Maybe
to.
Barry Weiss is teaching it to him or something like that.
Bob, with the news of this week, I'm very reminded by one of our favorite lines from the film The Way of the Gun, where it's this classic scene where James Caan and Benicio del Toro are sharing a cup of coffee, and after a somewhat botched kidnapping, James Caan asks Benicio del Toro, "Are you the brains or the brawn of this operation?" And Benicio del Toro's response is, "To tell you the truth, I don't think this is a brains kind of operation." Which is how I feel about the Trump national security team. And I just want us to talk about that a little bit before we get into some of our other stuff, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, it's not a brains type operation, that's for sure. Thank God.
I think it's one of the few things we have going for us in this horrible moment.
If these people were smart, we'd be really in trouble.
They're not only, to be fair, they were trying to be smart by using a commercial encrypted security app so that they wouldn't be accountable to the state machinations that kind of keep an eye on what national security teams do. It also has an auto delete feature on that app, apparently. But then someone on that team decided to add the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic. And don't get me wrong, because I feel like Jeffrey Goldberg is a reprehensible human being in his own right. I don't think he reaches the level of Hegseth and Vance, but he's pretty bad. And they added it. And for some reason, it's a hoax that what he said and all the things that he shared. But not only are they arrogant, but they're arrogant and stupid, and they're vile people.
Goldberg was an IDF guard at basically a torture center. And it's hilarious because Hegseth and all these people are attacking him for being, I guess he's radical left too. I don't. But yeah, these are dangerous people and things are bad. But yeah, thank God they're idiots as well. We can't even run a text through. And I know we talked about this. That the part that's I think very depressing is that the Democratic Party is jumping all over this. Right? They see an opportunity,
and the media,
right?
Corporate media,
not because they attack Yemen, which is a violation of international law. U.S. and Yemen have no hostilities. They're just doing this for Israel. So it's like, there's no legal grounds to attack Yemen. They've been attacking Yemen since Obama was president too. We have to do a show on Fadi. But nobody cares about that. It's just the procedure of it. They didn't follow the order, the correct procedure, the correct rules.
And they started that signal chat and added Goldberg that day, which was before they struck the Houthi. And everyone is upset that they were using this Signal app, and then they were also added a reporter. But then the other part is that they're not upset that they murdered 52 people that day, and that they, including children, mostly civilians. When the Atlantic released the full Signal thread, the full text thread, there's an exchange between Vance and Michael Waltz, the national security advisor, who may be looking for a new job soon, just is my prediction. But it's about how they collapsed. They filed a missile into the girlfriend of the top missile guy of the Houthis' apartment building and collapsed the building. And they're all like fist emojis and American flag emojis and like, excellent is what JD Vance says. And I just want to say that, so other than maybe the Houthi missile guy who went into the building, that was full of civilians, and they're celebrating that. And I just want to say that these are vile murderers, and it's very disturbing. I want to say it, and that's not what the Democrats are appalled by. That's not what the corporate media is appalled by, because they're actually part of the same agenda.
And the Democrats haven't given a shit about genocide since October of 23. They don't care. Children are killed. Yeah. They don't care. Only 34 Democrats today signed on to a letter. I think Elizabeth Warren passed it around condemning ICE for snatching these students. So the Democratic Party is useless. And they're in the Cold War. They haven't moved beyond that. They're talking about, obviously, Ukraine and Russia, NATO, Poland. It's insane. They're arguing for a world that hasn't existed for quite some time. They want NATO this and military and that. Dude, that doesn't exist anymore. The American people don't want that. The American people want to get out of Ukraine. They wanted to get out of Afghanistan. Significant numbers don't want to be involved in Israel. And yet the Democratic Party plows ahead like it's Dean Acheson and the Marshall Plan and the National Security Act. And it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. The other,
no, I just say, but at least they didn't use text messages. So
they didn't use an unsanctioned group chat.
Yeah. As a historian, that's troubling because they do, and that's the reason they're doing this is just there's no records, right? You can avoid record keeping that way. Like I can go back, and, like the LBJ Library in Austin is awesome, and I can see like massive collections regarding LBJ and Vietnam and all that kind of stuff. Whereas if you're using Signal, that's gone, and there's no record of it. Which, obviously Trump's FBI isn't going to investigate them. They need to bring Merrick Gelding back.
The Attorney General Pam Bondi has actually already said that she didn't think it merited an investigation for the Department of Justice.
Yeah. Barr and Bondi are essentially acting like Trump's personal lawyers, and Merrick Gelding was like, I think he was too. I wouldn't be surprised if Merrick Gelding is on Trump's payroll, the way he acted, like gave him a walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's funny. Hegseth just is such a even in that crew, he's particularly reprehensible.
Yeah, I think the level of incompetence all of that crew is reprehensible. I would actually say that there's a level of incompetence amongst a number of them. Hegseth being the top, and Walz actually both being at the top of that list. Yeah. Hegseth is completely unqualified for his job and has decided to do things like take off the pictures of Colin Powell out of the Pentagon and fire all the black generals and admirals or women admirals or whatever. And they outed actually whatever, and I don't really care that much about what I'm about to say about the individuals I'm about to talk about. They outed actually a human intel source on the ground in Yemen for the Israelis with their bravado on Signal. And I think there's a level of incompetence there. And if I were pilots flying over Yemen or I were working in intelligence services abroad, I'd be like really worried that these are the people who I expect to have my back.
Exactly. It'd be hard to have confidence that they're not going to get you killed.
Yeah.
And they probably will. But yeah, Hegseth is, I'm old and I study this stuff. So when I study this, there's plenty of archives have images and pictures and stuff. And generally people in those positions, they carry themselves in a distinguished way. They have on nice suits and they just have a certain, and Hegseth, he's a frat. He's got fucking right-wing tattoos and he's drinking and it's funny. And I think it goes back to nobody wants to work for Trump. I know that he doesn't trust people, but at the same time, like people don't want to work for him either. Actually, I saw a piece today. I think it was a Political Wire, an unnamed Republican senator said that they should get rid of J.D. Vance. It was a huge mistake. These people are gutless and they're afraid to say anything, but I think they do understand what a shit show this is.
Yeah, I think my working through at this point is that the GOP in the House and the Senate are basically waiting for these people to implode. And at this point, they're also terrified of Musk's money flooding into primaries or what have you. And so they're just going to keep quiet and vote to confirm whatever psychopath he puts into office.
It's bizarre. It's making me rethink everything I believed for a long time about kind of the ruling class, the way government's structured. Like Trump, just like these white shoe law firms he's threatening, and they're caving, they're capitulating. If anybody can take on Trump, and these are executive orders. I'm not a lawyer. I study this stuff. I'm not a lawyer, but executive orders aren't laws. They're not. So if Trump has an executive order that like the Scott Parkin law firm is going to be in trouble.
Parkin Basinko.
But they're like, you're the lawyer. You know this better than anybody. If anybody is equipped to say, go fuck yourself, we're not doing that. It would be a high-end New York white shoe law firm. And they're capitulating. That's how gutless they are. Yeah. I mean, this is a shakedown. It's a shakedown. It's like The Sopranos. We've talked about that, right?
Yeah, I don't know if we've talked about it on air, but I think the analogy that really fits is season 2 of The Sopranos, where Tony's high school buddy Davey gets into a lot of gambling debt and they do the bust out. It's a classic bust out. It also happens in Goodfellas too, by the way.
Davey Statino, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And they just like steal everything that's not nailed down, including like
great job, Hank Sam.
Great job. And Trump, I actually see Trump and Musk as the sort of like heads of the family here doing this. And Musk is definitely going in to steal whatever he can and cut Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, and which threatens tens of millions of people, probably hundreds of millions of people, maybe not hundreds of millions, lots of people. And to do that so he can get more government contracts, because he's on the losing end when it comes to the sort of private enterprise of his companies. So they're going to just get public contracts.
And I'm at the age now where don't fucking touch that Medicare and Social Security. It's real for me now. So I stay away from it. Forever. We've always heard, right? You can't touch Social Security. You'll get destroyed if you do that. And essentially what I've been reading, again, like unnamed Republicans who aren't willing to go on record have said that, praised, we can't go after Social Security. But at this point, they get away with everything. I don't know. There is no end. There is no, for 8 years, this is it for Trump, or he'll never get over this. And it keeps going. There's no opposition. There's no one pushing him on this. Chuck Schumer and John Fetterman become the face of the Democratic Party. And they put up with it. Like, Fetterman should be exiled. Like, he's a fucking Republican senator at this point.
Yeah.
Why? That's what gives me. The Democrats spend millions of dollars getting these people elected. And then they flip. Sometimes they just actually flip parties. But if not, they act the way they do, like Fetterman does. And there's no accountability. The Democrats don't do anything. You watch, Schumer's got to be in Pennsylvania campaigning for Fetterman. All of them will be. Pelosi went down to the Valley to lobby for Henry Cuellar, who is one of the most reprehensible people of those 535. He's just utterly disgusting, I think. And Pelosi supports him. It's a bad thing.
But
go ahead.
Well, and what they'll do is it's going to be vote blue no matter who. It's the most important election of your lifetime. And I totally agree that we're in a very bad moment, like worse than we've probably seen in a long time. Definitely in my lifetime, probably your lifetime.
Yeah.
And they're going to just double down on the same losing strategy that they've had for the last 50 years. 50 years, that's what they're doing.
They're already doing it.
And even where the progressives are fighting back or going on the Fight the Oligarchy tour, they're annoyed with that. They're very unhappy about that, is what the stories are coming out now saying.
Schumer did an interview last week with Brett Stevens, who's equally odious, and he said, my job is to keep the left wing pro-Israel. Like, he's a Democratic minority, Senate minority leader now. That's his job, is to fucking defend Israel. He didn't say, my job is to make sure people have healthcare, make sure people have food, make sure people have jobs. None of that. Make sure people aren't snatched off the streets. He is just really one of the most odious and reprehensible people. And like, obviously he's different than Trump. Trump is just vulgar and up there, but Schumer is every bit as odious as he is. And I think what we're seeing now too is really the kind of ultimate demise of liberal institutions. Democratic Party, liberals in the Democratic Party. For the first time was it Rashida Tlaib circulated a letter. I think this was about, and only 14 people signed it. Elizabeth Warren has a letter circulating. Only 34 Democrats sign it.
From the House and Senate, not just
from the House and Senate.
Yeah.
And Hakeem Jeffries is scolding people for embarrassingly wearing pink as a form of protest. Oh, and it's funny too, because I talked to people I know, family members who are like ardent Democrats. They're vote blue no matter who people, and they're sick of it. They're sick of Schumer. They're sick of Hakeem Jeffries. I think a lot of people have hit their limit now. It's become just the kind of thing. And I know this is frustrating, right? We've been saying this our whole lives. Nobody listened. And we caught shit for it all the time. And you guys are too angry and all you do and blah, blah, blah. And it's not just you and me. It's millions of people. We were right. And it didn't take much to figure that out. You need to be a fortune teller. But these liberal institutions, I don't know if you're going to say something. I was going to actually talk a little bit about universities, since that's.
I was going to segue us into that.
Oh, okay.
And so there's a piece where there have been people who've been standing up to all of this, like people who we align with, we've had on the show, we've done shows about, some of which are our friends and comrades. And so the other part we're seeing here is like Trump is really stepping up the war on the left. And we talk about that. We've talked about that quite a bit. We actually had a recent episode on the state repression being as as American as cherry pie. And so just there's where people fought back against the genocide in Gaza last year, and we're seeing that. We're gonna talk about that here in a second. I do want to flag that we actually haven't done a week in radical history in quite some time, and there's two that I just want to mention real quick right now, which are really relevant to what we're about to talk about. On March 28th, 1915, anarchist Emma Goldman gave a lecture in New York on family planning, of which she had been arrested for many times for just giving those talks. She eventually was deported as a result of the first Red Scare. So this is not the first time we've seen people abducted for speaking out against U.S. policy or what's like the status quo. And then also on March 28th in 1919, which is the sort of height of the first Red Scare, the state of Arkansas actually joined most U.S. states in banning anarchism and communism. The law to, quote, define and punish anarchy and Bolshevikism, unquote, barred revolutionary activism and red and black flags with up to 6 months in jail as punishment. And so that's I don't think we're too much into giving a lot of historical analogies, but I do want to just say that this is not the first time we've seen this in American history, and things have been bad before, but it's going to get bad here for a while, is the sort of the writing on the wall.
No, that's something I've been stressing a lot, quite some time now, actually. But this is as American as cherry pie. This goes on. There's a long legacy of it. Democratic and Republican representatives and presidents alike. FDR set up camps for Japanese Americans, and LBJ, Kennedy and LBJ unleashed the FBI against civil rights. So yeah, it's got a long legacy, and yeah, we're clearly in a very bad spot. I think the other day in class, I played Margaret Chase Smith's famous speech about McCarthy. What was called a Declaration of Conscience. And that was in 1950. And this is a Republican senator from Maine. And I guess Bernie Sanders is doing that, but Bernie Sanders also is pro-Israel and votes for Israel. So there's really nothing like that, which is unfortunate. But it took a long time for the fever of McCarthyism to break. But even then, like when he went after the army, people finally said, okay, this guy's crazy. But Trump calls veterans suckers and losers. And just the media capitulates, the Democratic Party caves in. It's this political fellatio. And it's just unbelievable to me. Like why everybody is, he's a sociopath. He's a crude, vulgar sociopath. And I don't know. That's pretty bad. These liberal institutions have failed. And I think that's really, we've been counting on that, right? Not you and me, but that's always been the fail-safe, right? We have these liberal institutions, we have democratic institutions, we have the courts and all that. And now we're saying that doesn't matter. One thing particularly important to me, because I'm a professor, is what's happening at universities. And there's been a lot of work like on McCarthyism in the universities, Alan Schrecker, and a lot of stuff on universities in the military industrial complex. I'm not obviously naive. I'm quite aware that the universities in the United States have a long tradition of enabling and fostering right-wing politics. In the McCarthy era, they got rid of professors. The famous New School in New York was founded by essentially Columbia professor refugees who left because of World War I and formed the New School. They have famous Stoughton Land, our friend who lost a job at Yale after he went to Vietnam. And now what we're seeing is way worse, I think, at Columbia, right, where they're working hand in glove. The dean is an IDF vet. She was an IDF spy, I think. And she's a dean at Columbia. You have these crazy vigilante groups sending names in of students they want doxxed or whatever, abducted. And the universities are just caved. They're not fighting it. I guess at Tufts, they weren't notified ahead of time about that woman being snatched off the street.
Through Yamisa Ozturk.
The woman from Turkey. But, and here in Texas, for instance, the Republicans who control the state have just proposed State Bill 37 that would create oversight for the Board of Regents in the actual classroom. So they essentially want regents to evaluate syllabi and to evaluate course content and to set up a snitch line for students and things like that. And that's McCarthyism right there. Maybe even more. Yeah, liberal institutions have really failed us. There used to be more liberal institutions, liberal religious institutions. They're not real active right now. So we're really the political system was more one-sided. That's scary. You don't really have that opposition there to take them on. And when you see it, which is occurring, I call it spontaneously, and I know there are people doing this, but like the movement against Elon Musk just emerged organically. Maybe organically is a better term. Or like groups like JPV and Students for Justice in Palestine emerged to take that on and fight against that. So there are people out there doing it, and I think we should be hopeful about that, right? But those old kind of institutions and ideas we relied on aren't there. They're gone.
No, they're fading fast. The labor movement's actually another example of that. They've been relatively silent. Last night, Trump put out an executive order basically stripping federal workers who work in the sort of national security or defense areas of the federal government, stripping away their ability to collectively bargain. He did that to the TSA a couple of weeks ago, but they definitely have a playbook that they're just unleashing on us right now. And part of it's a war on these liberal institutions. It's a big part of it, to be fair, but it's also a war on the left. They're targeting international students who protested around the genocide in Gaza. They're protesting labor, or they're taking on labor. There's a huge push now coming out to privatize the post office, which we actually should just do a whole show on. We're also seeing where private equity and banks like Wells Fargo are actually in the mix on that. And like I said, I actually don't think Musk and Trump are really rooted in ideology other than their own power and their own gain. And it's the bust out, right? I can't say that enough. It's the bust out of Davies Sporting Goods store. It's that simple. Like, I don't think Trump's like any kind of third 3D chess player or anything like that.
I no longer challenge it because it's pointless. Trump is a really bad guy. I still think that there's issues with the whole kind of this is fascism thing. I'm not going to argue it anymore because it's so fucking bad. Who cares what you call it? But I think Trump and Musk really are. This is a personal corruption with that more than anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even, I'm not sure it's even for the ruling class because the ruling class isn't, did I send you that poll of like business leaders? Like it's 67% think tariffs going to ruin the economy. 80% think the economy is going in the wrong direction. Like these are business leaders. This isn't like you and me. So
it's Jeffrey Sonnenberg's poll out of the Yale Business School.
Yeah. And like he's willing to say things no Democrat would say. He goes after corporations. And like I had a great interview, if you haven't seen it, with Will Potter just a few days ago. And we talked about like, these were our ideas. The media sucks. We didn't say fake news, but that's what we meant. The media sucks and you can't trust these. Those are my ideas. And the Democratic Party attacked us for it. And fucking Trump absorbs those ideas rhetorically only. He didn't mean it. He didn't give a shit. Obviously, right? He says, I care about working people. And now he's destroying. And that's the thing too. Like everybody's focused, and this is, Trump's a racist. I don't think there's any doubt. It'd be hard to claim, no, this isn't racially motivated, right? But at the same time, this is bigger than that. It's not just racist. He's going after workers. He's going after unions. One of the people abducted was a farm workers organizer in California. Now he's going after
in Washington State.
Washington wasn't okay. Now he's going after federal workers and fucking Sean Fahey, who, has a pretty good reputation because Fain is a steel worker, likes tariffs. So he's fucking gone quiet. It's like radio silence, and just because you're a steelworker president doesn't mean you don't have to defend other workers. You defend labor. Your responsibility is to labor.
Mm-hmm.
If you think that these tariffs are going to make auto workers or steel workers rich, first of all, they're not. Secondly, but you're going to get rid of like 2-3 million jobs in the process. And if you've studied McCarthyism or any of that, labor and the universities both kind of purge themselves internally. And that's the thing. Like right now, obviously, we have ICE agents of the government who are snatching people, but a lot of this is being done internally, right? The governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, or Blue, no matter who type, about a month ago, canceled a job opening at Hunter College because it was for Palestinian studies. Good liberal who says, you can't even have somebody in this field to talk about it. And that's the thing. People are getting in trouble. Like the tough student co-authored an op-ed in the student newspaper. The student paper.
Yep. It's unbelievable. I will also say that, and we've said this a couple of times before, most of what the demands that Trump has put on Colombia, actually, Colombia was already planning to do most of what was on that demand list. And like we talk about with the Red Scare from the McCarthy era, is that the right, McCarthy didn't actually have to go after universities because the liberal university administrators were taking care of it already. Same, I think Trump wants it for the cred that he did it. Same with the unions. They didn't actually purge communists out. The McCarthyites didn't purge communists out of the unions. The union bosses did it. The liberal union
CIO
bosses
had a big purge.
Yeah.
People who were communists, who were probably the best organizers in the CIO.
Yeah,
And that's the thing, because liberals have always distanced themselves, run away from communism and attacked us. That's why, like, we're vulnerable to this, because they become the left. Like, when Trump's talking about the radical left, he's talking about like fucking corporate CEOs and Pelosi
and Biden, Harris.
Yeah, these are radical left to him. Like, as somebody who, at least I think I'm somewhat radical left, like those people aren't on my side. And so it creates this, and they are never there to defend you. You can make a very affirmative argument. Look what the communists did for civil rights in the United States. From the communists in Harlem, they defended the Scottsboro Boys. You had lawyers, often Jewish lawyers from New York, going down into the South to defend blacks who were set up on these crimes. And
some of MLK's top advisors were communists.
It was Stanley Levinson, right?
Yeah.
Was red-baited. Harry Haywood, Paul Robeson, Du Bois. So this is always the line. Bayard Rustin. And no one ever defended them by saying, so what? That's the response. Yeah, we are. Fuck you. So what?
Yeah.
And when you see these hearings in Congress, just the way they're just browbeating these liberals, and they don't say anything and they don't fight back. You have something like Jasmine Crockett, who's been good. She's been good theater lately. But then even, I think, a lot of lefties right now, no matter what Bernie Sanders does, they're down on it. And I get it, but I don't think it's a bad thing that he and AOC are drawing 30, 40,000 people to complain about what's going on. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Jasmine Crockett joined the Tesla takedown webinar last week, which had over 6,000, like something like 6,000 people on it, or 6,000 people RSVP'd for it or something.
Yeah.
And Bondi went after her and said that she better be careful or she's going to get prosecuted.
Sure. And the thing is, they're saying that obviously, but like at some point you call their bluff. We'll applaud you. They made a good point. You got to do something. Like, whether it's going to work or not, at some point you got to do something. Greenpeace had to step in to fight. This group has to step in. You've got to do something. Because sitting back and freaking out about it, or saying, oh, it'll get worse if we push them. Let's take the crumbs we have. Like Schumer, right? Oh, it's just going to be worse if we stop this. You have to. Tesla takedown is great. I think these campus protests, the fact that they responded so brutally, I think indicates they were worried about it. Look at the summer of 2020. They were snatching people off the streets in the summer of 2020. And that was in some ways, that's actually, you could argue that's worse, because these are targeted people who you could create some bogus reason for. In the summer of 2020, they were just grabbing people. Like, they don't know who the hell they were getting. They were just grabbing people and throwing them in vans.
Yeah, it's true. If they were just wearing black.
Yeah. They were beating up grandmothers in Portland, right? So to expect this to somehow be different, and Biden did plenty of this shit. Biden is the one really, oh my God, as much as anybody, Biden incited the Zionists on campus, right? Ferocious anti-Semitism and blah, 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 and all this shit. Yeah. Just, that's one of the most dirty things I've seen, just to be able to use these ugly allegations of anti-Semitism anytime you disagree with somebody. That's really dirty. That's scary.
Yeah. I will say that I'm inspired by things like the Tesla takedown movement, and the federal workers, which are rallying in big numbers. And still today, despite targeted abduction by the federal government, students on these campuses who are going out and fighting in the genocide in Gaza, which continues, by the way. And in the West Bank, it's also getting pretty ugly. And so I do want to say there's a lot of inspiration there. I just hope people get more organized. The Malcolm X said that we're not outnumbered, we're out organized. And if there's a lot of ways in which people could organize in this moment, so we could prevent ICE abductions of people off of the street. And in some communities, they do that. I've seen in Sacramento and Chicago and places like that where they are doing that. And I think that's
DC yesterday, a crowd prevented ICE from, I think this one worked at an elementary school cafeteria or something like that. But the people at the school were trained and they wouldn't let them in and they left. That's happened in Chicago.
There's a crackdown coming in DC. He actually signed an executive order in the last couple of days, basically with like small language in there about how unpermitted, and DC is a place where he actually has a little bit more power than the other states, but where unpermitted protests and rallies will not be permitted in DC any longer. And so we're probably going to be seeing some sort of tension and conflict building over that before too long.
Well, they'll probably cave into it too. The guy says, you're not allowed to protest. You have a big protest. Like
he actually had the DC dismantle. There's a plaza that they turned into
Black Lives Matter. Yeah.
And he had the Mayor Bowser dismantle it, and she did it.
And she did it. And that's the thing. Like, these are small symbolic things, but they mean a lot because it annoyed, like that picture in Colorado, the portrait of him, which was really horrible. And they took it down.
No, it was beautiful. It was the most amazing picture ever.
But the thing is, like, those little things really get to him. Like, there's no sense of like psychological warfare with this guy. Like, actually, you challenge him on little shit like that because it'll make him crazy. They have no idea. They don't do that. They're afraid of the guy. I think he's a fucking clown. I really do. He's dangerous because he's the monkey at the zoo throwing his shit at everybody.
Harris totally got his goat when she just challenged him on his crowd sizes in the debates.
You can get
that's
to this
probably
stuff.
It's probably also why the Trump campaign wouldn't let him ever debate again.
And the media let him off the hook because that debate, he just got destroyed. He got utterly, absolutely devastated, right? And then he refused to debate again. That would be politically devastating, but nobody cares.
Yeah.
I think the Democratic Party's years of neglect of everybody is big, but the media is really horrific. Really, I think, and look at the way they're caving Bezos and all the others.
No,
I think that, I wonder if, I have noticed the New York Times has become a little more aggressive recently. And I wonder if that's because they see an opening now because Washington Post is like losing credibility by the minute. But
what we're saying is where he backs off when he's challenged by power by people with power, is that they're also sensing that too.
Weren't we supposed to get tariffs on January 21st?
Yeah.
And we still really don't. Like today, the market's down 800 so far today because of the 25% tariffs. But everything he touches in a way, like everything he touches turns to shit. He's changed Canadian politics. I suspect the Canadian conservatives are pissed off at him right now. Yesterday, he was like bitch slapped by Greenland. Tesla takedown is effective. Like everything that happens, he can't handle it. And if you take him on, let's fantasize for a minute. Imagine a national strike. What would they do? What would they do?
What could they do?
What could they do? That's it. And that's something that people don't realize. Like, even I was talking to some colleagues, like the state of Texas, I'm retired, so it doesn't apply to me. I don't give a shit. But if they're going to overlook professors, like, I want to see your syllabus. What are you teaching? The Board of Regents can't do that. There's 800 professors and there's more than that at UT. And there's like Texas Tech, and Texas A&M is one of the biggest schools in the country. You can't evaluate every classroom in the Texas university system. It's just not possible. So they're going to rely on snitches like they're doing today, but you take them on. You take them on. Like you tell somebody you can't teach that. So you go in and you double down and you teach it.
Yeah.
And do that. I've always done that. My students don't freak out. They're not dumb. They're pretty smart kids and they know what the world works like. And so when you tell them this shit, they don't freak out. They don't freak out. You know?
Yeah.
You can tell people the truth.
The mass non-cooperation, which hopefully will come, which we're seeing in different pockets around the country, is as his crackdown gets worse or as his like lunacy gets worse, then I think we're going to just see more and more of that. It's not going to be from any institutional opposition. It's not going to be from the Democrats or the unions or anything else. It's going to be from a lot of communities and people like just raising hell and not cooperating. The way in which Tom Homan, his borders are freaked out on media just in the first week of the administration because people in Chicago were so well organized to disrupt ICE raids on undocumented communities. They call this know your rights, but what this actually is how to avoid arrest. And
it is exactly.
People are actually getting more and more organized like that.
Yeah.
I can promise you that. I can see it. I'm in those circles. I'm in those spaces.
Yeah.
We all need to organize. We all need to like get involved in a whole lot of different things. Not just DSA, which is what the Brooklyn people tell us, but get involved in your local anarchist book reading club or in your local food co-op or whatever. But there's a lot of ways in which we're going to be able to disrupt this system. And it's going to take a lot of little bits and it's going to take a lot of big bits.
Yeah.
That's my rant for the day.
Yeah, I would say definitely avoid the Brooklyn directives because
I think that the only last thing we were going to touch on is is a remembrance.
Yeah. Probably can handle this better than I can.
Yeah. A couple of days ago, Robert McChesney passed away, who was a distinguished professor at the University of Washington, who had his reputation was really around media and democracy. He published like dozens of books looking at his bibliography. He co-authored books with Ed Herman and Jason Bellamy Foster and John Nichols. Apparently he was pretty tight with John Nichols. And he was a big champion of journalism. And we also recently did a show with Project Censor's, I'm not speaking very well today. Mickey Huff, the director of Project Censored, Mickey Huff. And we've looked at this just recently, but Bob McChesney was actually a champion of this stuff. And I, for a long time as a up and coming leftist, I guess I'm an old and jaded leftist now, but as an up and coming leftist, like Bob McChesney, some of his work, some of the stuff I looked at just to get a good analysis on the media, along with Ed Herman and Noam Chomsky and Project Censored and so on and so forth. So just want to put out a salute, rest in power to Bob McChesney.
Yeah. Say one more thing, because this is very bleak. And I think it's incumbent on, we always have to finish it with some sign of hope. But there are times when things change pretty rapidly, like when the world changes fairly rapidly. I remember South African apartheid, thinking it's there, it's going to be there forever, but it wasn't. Or the end of the Soviet Union, which was very, very rapid. Watergate changed America. And then, so the Democratic Party in 1974, 1976 wins big. 4 years later, Reagan takes over. Look at COVID. COVID was cataclysmic in the change. Things can change and they can change quickly, but it requires people to be ready for that change. So like when the COVID shit happened, the right wing was ready, going batshit about vaccines and masks and ivermectin and all that crap, right? And we need to be ready because the people aren't happy with the world. Not that many people do you have enough money? Probably not. Do you like your health care? Probably not. Right? What do you think of the schools? They suck. Right? What do you think of public services? They suck. They like the post office and they'll get rid of that. Right? So things can be done and they can happen quickly. We have that. We know that. There can be these shifts which occur fairly rapidly, but you got to be prepared for them. And some of these people are doing that, right? The Tesla folks and the Jewish Voice for Peace and various and minor, they're planning. And we have to be ready because when these things occur, you have to be there to take advantage of it. You can't just sit, you can't be the Democratic Party. Just keep kicking the can down the road.
I think 2020 is actually a good example of this because the right wing was very ready. They had been talking, they've been prepared, they've been organized around that stuff. The left was pretty ready in 2020 as well. You saw a lot of mutual aid. It's also the flowering of the Green and Red podcast in this period. So we're covering this a lot then, but we saw a lot of mutual aid when COVID first hit. But then more importantly, because people have been organizing protests and direct actions and things like that in the country for so long when the police murder of George Floyd happened, is we saw the largest number of protests in American history happen.
Yeah.
And which really disrupted the system. I actually feel like it was a 1-2 punch that kind of went after Trump in many ways. Yeah. And so I think that's an important thing to note. And he responded pretty heavy-handed against protests in Portland and Washington, predictably, and it wrecked him in many ways.
And that's why Biden won. And the Democrats, they took these forces that brought them that victory, and they abandoned them and rejected those people.
And let's also be clear what the Democrats, their role in 2020 was for Obama to try and stop NBA players from striking in protest of George Floyd's murder and weren't bowing or praying or whatever with kente cloths on. So that's the Democratic Party's response.
That's one of the greatest pictures in American history. Chuck Schumer with a kente cloth
and Nancy Pelosi. But it's important to note that there's a street presence which has existed for a long time in the U.S., which actually, it may not always be a movement, but it's a moment, and a lot of people responded to the moment.
Yeah. You got to look for a little bit of optimism, a haven. It's bad. The thing that Will Potter said, which I think is really critical, and we've said that as well, no one's coming to rescue us. No one's going to save us. No. There's not some Marvel universe character coming out. It's up to us.
No cavalry coming. No cavalry's coming.
What's that?
No cavalry is coming.
Yeah. The universities the university leaders aren't going to help us out. The unions aren't going to help us out. The Democratic Party is going to help us out. Churches probably won't help us out. So we're on our own.
Yeah.
And we got to do something.
Yep.
Be realistic, demand the impossible.
Be realistic, demand the impossible. And tune into the Green and Red podcast because hopefully we'll be delivering political education and messages of hope or
truth bombs.
Truth bombs. There you go.
You know what? I think Homer Simpson called it that, didn't he? I think it was Homer. Remember Homer had a TV show briefly? He was a host of a political show. A new show on TV.
And if
be an improvement over what we're seeing today from the media.
The Simpsons also presciently predicted the rise of Trump as president too.
Yeah,
Keep fighting, make a lot of trouble. I'm going to go into our regular outro, which is if you like what you're hearing, please hit subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this on the audio platforms, give us a rate and review. It helps us with the algorithms. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then if you really like us, go to greenredpodcast.org and hit the support button or become a patron at patreon.com/greenredpodcast. And thanks for listening to us. And we will be back very soon with even more insightful insights. So there you go. Talk to you later.
Oh, the sun's gonna shine in my life once more.